Hey everybody, welcome back to Daijah's book recommendations. So these are going to be winter book recommendations, and I have mostly ones to kind of fit the atmosphere of winter, a lot of those spooky type of books. So this is the first video that I'm doing in this series, and so there's just going to be book recommendations quickly surrounding a theme to give you guys, but I'm not going to go too into depth with each book. So the first book that I have is actually one of my favorites of all time, and that is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. I love this book so much. Basically, we follow this girl Pip who is doing a senior project, and for her project you can do anything. So she decides to investigate this murder in her town that was never really solved. Everybody has an idea of who actually did this murder, but she doesn't think that's necessarily accurate, and so she's trying to get to the bottom of this. So this kind of follows her throughout the fall and going into winter. I know during this time she's also applying to college applications, so seeing that was really nice to see someone else going through the same thing that I'm going through, and probably a lot of you are also going through with applying and writing essays and things like that. So I really enjoyed seeing that, and this book is just so fast-paced and keeps you on your toes 24/7. There were so many plot twists in here. I never ever expected what happened at the end to actually happen, and I just love this book so much, and I think so many more people need to read it. And there is also a little bit of romance, which I really enjoyed, but it's not overpowering for people who don't like it. And one of the biggest selling points I think of this is it is a mixed media format, and if you don't know what that is, since she is doing this for a school project, we have transcripts of interviews that she does and notes in her journal that she's doing for her school project. So I'm going to give this book 5 out of 5 for enjoyment, and I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5 for winter vibes. The next book that I have is Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson, which is also more of a mystery, and this one actually takes place at a boarding school, which I really love. I love anything with boarding schools, and this girl goes to this boarding school. This boarding school specifically made for people who want to focus in on one thing. So she's focusing on true crime because that's what she loves. So both this and the last book really give off true crime vibes. So she's investigating a disappearance that occurred back when the boarding school was first founded, and there's kind of a similar murder going on current day. And this book is also extremely fast-paced, and I think the boarding school aspect really lends itself well to this, and that was definitely my favorite part. I really enjoyed the characters in here. You see a lot of different types of teenagers and different interests, and I think that they were all really realistic to how teenagers are today. I just really love this book a lot. I think it's more fall than it is winter, but I think that it's still a good read for this time of year. So I'm going to give this book a 4 out of 5 for enjoyment and a 4 out of 5 for winter vibes. The next book that I'm going to talk about is also a mystery, but it's a historical fiction mystery, and my friend's actually borrowing it right now, and that is Stalking Jack the Ripper by Carrie Maniscalco. So we're following our main character in this book, and she lives in the Victorian era, and she is always interested in like cadavers and dissecting bodies and things like that, but during this time that's not really acceptable for women. So she kind of does it on the sly with her uncle, and so then a series of murders start to occur, and this is supposed to be a retelling of Jack the Ripper. So the twist here is actually a character in the novel. It's not a real person who we think is Jack the Ripper today. It's just one of the characters placed as it. The writing is amazing, and this one is probably more heavy on the romance than the other two that I mentioned. I definitely think that the romance lends itself to this book so well, and I just loved seeing the societal issues that were brought up with our main character Audrey Rose. She really wanted to do something that wasn't seen as acceptable for women. So I'm definitely going to give this book a 5 out of 5 for enjoyment and a 5 out of 5 for winter vibes, just because it does take place during winter with those cool crisp vibes, and the spooky atmosphere really helps it create that winter feel. The next book that I have is The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. I really love this book, and I think it's actually one of the most wintry books on here. We follow our main protagonist, and she and her family are all kind of psychics. She does not actually have any psychic powers though. The thing about Blue is that she's told to stay away from everybody because her true love will die. It's kind of just a foretold thing that whoever is her true love is going to die. And we follow her getting mixed up with these group of 4 boys called the Raven Boys. But I think that this book really just encaptures a good winter vibe and spookiness without it being too like Halloween or anything like that. And I just really love this book, and there's a lot of things in this I didn't expect, and there's a lot of like Latin and things in here that I really enjoyed. It is definitely playing into kind of like that dark academia feel, which I love. Truly Devious also plays into that a lot as well, but the dark academia vibes in here are really off the charts. I'm gonna give this a 4 out of 5 for enjoyment and a 5 out of 5 for winter vibes. The next book that I have is City of Ghosts by Victoria Schwab. This is the only middle grade I have on this list, and we follow this little girl and she almost drowned, and after she had this traumatic event she started to be able to see ghosts, and her parents actually kind of research ghosts, and one of them is more like analytical, dealing with like the history of places, and the other one focuses more on the spiritual aspect. So her parents actually get this deal to have a documentary series, so they move from America all the way to Scotland, and so obviously it's a very historic place with a lot of ghosts. So she starts communicating with these ghosts, and she also has a best friend that's a ghost, and I just think that this is so cute. It does have like a little twist in it that I loved, but I just love the characters in this so much, and seeing our main character and her best friend was adorable, and also seeing this girl having to deal with having this secret that she keeps from everybody I think was just amazing. And this definitely is good for middle schoolers as well. I would recommend this for like 7th and 8th graders if you have any younger siblings. I'm gonna give this a 5 out of 5 for enjoyment and a 5 out of 5 for winter vibes, because Scotland, it's such like a wintry place with all the rain and the dampness and the cold, and I really just felt the atmosphere in here a lot with the writing. The next book that I have is A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Bridget Kemmerer, and this is a part of a series as well. I really love this book so much. It's one of the only fantasy books that I think really give me winter vibes. This is actually a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and our main character actually has cerebral palsy, and a lot of people I know who have cerebral palsy have said that this book has amazing representation, and this is one of their favorite books of all time. So I think that's definitely really important that the representation in here is accurate and good. And so we basically follow this girl who's struggling because she has cerebral palsy and her dad left, and she is here with her brother trying to take care of each other. One day she kind of gets swept up, kidnapped by this man, and gets taken to another world, and that man actually ends up being a guard for a prince there. So this prince actually is trying to break this curse because there is this monster that kind of attacks and kills people and destroys his kingdom. It's causing a lot of damage, so he's trying to break this curse and have a girl fall in love with him to get rid of this creature. And there's a lot of twists and turns in here that I did not expect. I just really love this book so much. The descriptions are so good. This is one of the only characters I've seen who's taken from their world, who sticks to their guns, is very stubborn, and especially for her having a disability, I think it's amazing. A lot of female characters who are being introduced to a new fantasy world are often very timid and don't like to take charge, but our main character in this is definitely not like that at all, and I just really loved this book a lot. So I'm gonna give this book a 5 out of 5 for enjoyment and a 4 out of 5 for winter vibes. So the last book that I'm going to mention is actually like a fantasy horror, and that is The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. I really like this book a lot. It's a lot of things. This has no one genre it fits into. It has fantasy elements, horror elements, and historical elements. So we follow our main character who lives in a society that's actually based off the Puritans, and so they have very strong religious ideals, and they're controlled by the church. Like, the church is the government, and they have a lot of really controlling rules, and that's where the horror came in more for me and made it more scary for myself, because strong religious groups that have almost cult-like activity really scare me, because I believe that they are very oppressive, and this definitely is resembling like a cult. They don't really have technology like that, and it's kind of like old values. You can even see on the cover this girl looks like she's kind of in Puritan type clothing and more like old-fashioned clothing. Our main character is kind of an outcast because her mother was killed on the pyre. She was believed to be a witch, and so she starts kind of developing her own powers and being drawn in this dark forest that's forbidden, and actually like was a detriment to her mother in being killed by the church. So she starts being drawn to this forest and trying to find out answers about her mom and her dad. Her dad is also not alive. This book is really scary, but not in a sense that I was scared like in a horror movie or something like that. This is more scary, like it caused me to think about a lot of things in my own life. I definitely think that this book can be read by people who don't like horror or anything like that. I would really just say to just pick it up if you're into darker fantasy with kind of like religious and societal issues being brought up in it. And this book has such amazing writing. Like, it's literally phenomenal, and this has a lot of kind of winter vibes, and like the author purposefully made this book feel cold and barren to kind of get across that feel of like what it's like to be in a cult and also this forest was kind of definitely more like a cold place. So I would give this book a 5 out of 5 for enjoyment and a 5 out of 5 for winter vibes. So those are all the recommendations that I have. I hope you guys pick one up and enjoy it. I tried to pick a wide variety of books, so there's something there for everybody to pick up. And as I said, all of those are young adult and middle grade, so definitely appropriate for high schoolers and even very mature middle schoolers, especially City of Ghosts, which is a middle grade. That's all I have for this book recommendations, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!